Great. Thanks, Dasa, for inviting me over for this conference. And it's really exciting to be here. It's truly an international forum where people from different experiences, different industries come and join and share ideas. So, really excited to be here. We are at a stage where we see every industry as a tech industry. What it means is that regardless of the business that enterprises run, whether it is manufacturing, retail, insurance, banking, telecommunications, every industry fundamentally is becoming a tech industry and tech enabled industry. And what it means also is that it is important to understand the nuances of how to deliver software at large scale, build effective systems, resilient systems, and leveraging right technologies as well. Over a period of time, Agile and DevOps have stabilized in terms of demonstrating to the businesses that it's a great approach to bring people together and provide incremental value, bake in the retrospectives, both from the teams, customers, all the stakeholders, and continuously improve the product and provide the business value. Now, we are at a stage where we see AI as a significant enabler. What we are going to talk about in this 20-25 minutes is broadly 5 to 6 topics. Firstly, understand how different DevAIOps is to DevOps. In fact, DevOps started, and today, as DevOps started, everybody is using various flavors of DevOps and leveraging the fundamentals of DevOps and building pipeline, calling it AIOps, calling it DevSecOps, calling it MLOps. Fundamental thing is weave every bit of value that is generated in the process and provide end-to-end value, establish feedback loop, and so on. However, there are nuances. We are going to understand what that is. More importantly, we are going to focus on what are the people and cultural aspects of implementing DevAIOps. And we'll also look at how to enable teams, what are the challenges in best practice to scale DevOps at enterprise level, and finally, nuances of measuring success in terms of metrics and so on. So, firstly, how different DevOps and DevAIOps are. There are 6 elements that I would like to bring to table here. Firstly, DevAIOps brings focus on usage of AI and machine learning in entirety of DevOps in terms of hyper automating tasks, in improving decision making, and finally continue to optimize the processes. It's beyond the regular automation into advanced automation at every stage. Stages of automatically generating the code, to code review, to infrastructure provisioning, and performance optimization at scale. While doing that, leveraging AI in the pipeline also brings predictive insights on how effective the pipeline is and how effective the teams are engaged and so on. So predictive insights is another difference. In large-scale AIOps, one of the nuances of implementation is self-healing systems. AI and ML bring in the true differentiation on self-healing in terms of automatically detecting anomaly, optimizing, and automatically taking corrective actions in terms of remediating a problem or auto-scaling. Continuous optimization is another area. The significant thing is here you have added complexity with another technology in the mix, AI and machine learning. So those are 6 differences that I see. However, it is important to know what are the people angle. What I spoke so far is around the technology and pipelines. But when we look at people angle, there are clearly differences around how this plays out. Firstly, regardless of AI coming in, human intervention, human in the loop, human on the loop is absolutely going to be the situation with AI too. Today, humans are heavily engaged, and tomorrow it's going to be not in the loop, maybe on the loop. Regardless, people will remain in front and center of the action. Therefore, it's important to examine what are the people and cultural angles of implementation. Firstly, DevOps, as you know, promotes cross-functional collaboration. Now bring in data scientists, AI specialists into the mix. That's another angle. And it's not only the angle of bringing AI specialists into the cross-functional collaboration, but leverage AI to do the cross-functional collaboration. For example, you're bringing virtual agents today in customer operations in simplified day-to-day work. However, in software development too, there are virtual assistants that come into play. A co-pilot that can nudge you to do better coding, a product management agent that can nudge you to think through the latest and greatest in the industry, an operation eye to the mix can bring in to say, hey, there is a request from your team member to answer some question. Can you look into this? Even if you miss it, it can be your conscience keeper. Therefore, there are two angles of cross-functional collaboration. One, AI specialist being in the mix, and secondly, AI amplifying the cross-functional collaboration. Think about it. Secondly, the continuous learning needs you to elevate your understanding on how AI, Gen AI, latest tool and tech can amplify your learning. At the same time, leverage those technologies for your own learning too. Thirdly, adaptability. Adaptability is important. There is no brainer there. But leverage AI agents, AI into amplifying adaptability and continuous improvement in terms of being able to provide continuous feedback, ability to test out a hypothesis, establish faster closed loop. All of that can be enabled through technology. Everybody understands automation mindset. Amplify that now. Data-driven decision making. Here, the ability to analyze and facilitate decision making is much faster. In terms of looking at the metrics constantly, looking at the performance, looking at the scalability needs, looking at the business metrics, and therefore ability to optimize becomes much bigger. However, look at how this helps you in empowering and establishing more ownership as your conscience keeper. Lastly, do not forget that while all this looks cool, an angle that you need to take into consideration is security and compliance. Using AI responsibly and leveraging AI to use AI responsibility. Look at AI from both the lenses. Interesting perspectives even on cybersecurity for today is while AI brings in threat, leverage AI to mitigate threat too. So think about that angle too. Lastly, and most importantly, leadership engagement and leadership communication becomes far important in continuously staying engaged. It doesn't end with leaders signing the check or providing the whys on a PI planning or a demo and walking away. Staying engaged becomes very important. That helps get a broader perspective for the team, and team stays motivated. And it also brings in a sense of shared ownership. So these are the few topics that I wanted to touch upon from people and culture angle. All this is great, but leveraging AI poses in the mix an uphill challenge. And it's not one or two. So we'll examine a few of them. Firstly, we are looking at AI bringing added complexity, and AI skill gaps today is massive. Everybody is new. While we talk about skill gap in even traditional technologies, on programming, whether it is Java, .NET, Python, etc. Today, if GenAI has come in last 6 months, 1 year, rapid demand creates a perception of massive skill gap, and that's a reality too. Data quality and availability is important, but look at it from the perspective of how you can incrementally augment that. When you add a mix into a continuous delivery loop and a pipeline, interoperability, comparability is another challenge. The biggest challenge that I see are the top few that are on the top: change management, cost, security, and ethical implication. Those are important to examine too. Most of it may sound add AI into the mix of anything, leave alone DevOps. And now comes a time when we start these and mitigating these from the angle of best practices. Let's go through that a little bit on practitioners' perspective of how to mitigate these challenges on each of the stages. Firstly, looking at complexity challenge, you don't need to start from scratch. Today, challenge around complexity can be mitigated with pre-built models, either LLMs or even small language models. There are pre-built models that you can start leveraging in order to mitigate the complexity. Secondly, focus on clear value and start with manageable use cases that are small enough before you start scaling up. That's how you start looking at it. And as we unfold the rest of the challenges, the complexity bit gets unearthed a little more clearly. Secondly, looking at the skill gap, it's no-brainer. We need to do a lot of training. We need to do workshop and certifications targeted on how AI can help on DevOps and accelerating DevOps. But do not stop there. Allow for experimentation with proof of concept, proof of value. You don't need to do it on your own. Organizations need not do it all alone. Today, there is large ecosystems that can be tapped into. Ecosystem of partners that can enable faster knowledge sharing, faster collaboration and learning. No one's got enough time in lifetime to fail themselves and do stuff. You need to look at collaboration through partnership. Next one is around data availability and quality. We face this in our organization too. We are taking 3 broad steps. Firstly, data governance practices around data quality, availability, and consistency is important. When you start looking at data quality, availability, and consistency, it may not start with everything being perfect. In fact, the single most technical challenge today is not about the AI models themselves. It is the data. So starting small, implementing data quality measures, availability, and bringing consistency will be first important thing. Secondly, look at leveraging data management tools. And lastly, add the mix of right roles, because we are talking the people and culture perspective here. So adding data engineers and domain experts working in collaboration becomes very important. And that's the clear single biggest step in getting right data quality. We are adding AI into the mix, obviously, and that also poses an added step of integration challenges and compatibility challenges. Everyone faces this, and every organization have a mix of both legacy and new, pretty much. And therefore, integration challenges are even bigger. Where do we start with? From technology construct, standardize and simplify. Standardize and simplify with open APIs. There are industry models available for pretty much every industry. Standardizing with open API gives a little bit of future-proofing ability. When you take out a component, introduce a component, your integration remains the same, and therefore the cost and delay due to the breakage can be mitigated effectively with that. Second biggest important thing around integration and compatibility is look at the people angle. Establish seamless communication and collaboration across teams, systems, and environments. It's not just about systems and environments. That's important for your operational value stream to function. But for your development and operational both value stream to function effectively, effective collaboration is important across people. And that's where AI can add a complexity, and AI can mitigate complexity too, with bringing in conversational ability, nudge ability, and so on into bringing that compatibility. Moving on, addressing the top 4 challenges next. Change management. The way to address change management is pretty much similar when you talk about whether it is business challenge or technology challenge. The core of that is leadership engagement, leadership attention to deploy right resources, enable the teams with training and support, and leadership attention to the mission is important. It's not just about approving the budgets. It's about staying involved and pivoting at right times. That's important. Secondly, communicate and reinforce. It's important to look at failure from the perspective of learning with smaller business case scaling and leveraging ecosystem to amplify the pace at which you can manage the change too. Ecosystem could contain the forums such as DASA. Ecosystem could contain several open source and commercial LLM providers or small language model providers. Ecosystem could contain hyperscalers. Ecosystem contains your business community as well as internal stakeholders. So leverage the ecosystem to amplify that. Costs. So today people talk about 10x productivity, 2x productivity, 40% reduction in development cost reduction with AI, and so on. In fact, those are all great. But when you bake in the amount of computing power that's needed in order to make a change with LLMs, it gets too complex from the cost economic standpoint. So establish right cost management framework and what you're looking to spend, what you're looking to gain over a period of medium to long term. Do not just look at short-term efficiency. One of the key things is to look at right balance between the resilience over medium to long term versus the short-term efficiency only. Think about that. Secondly, look at effective cost management with open source, serverless computing, pay-as-you-go models. And finally, although there is a great deal of conversation around ChatGPT, LLMs, today, viability is being proven with small language models too, as a technology construct. Because, for example, to address a pipeline that deals with detecting an anomaly in a network, telecommunications network, do not need to know everything around the world that LLM poses. You may deploy SLMs too, potentially. Those are some of the angles to think about. Next one, security and privacy concerns are big in terms of leveraging AI, but mitigate that with AI. Also mitigate that with right technology constructs around security, such as encryption, access controls, protection of data, and so on, along with responsible AI constructs. Can you explain where a particular recommendation comes from? Can you explain whether there is an infringement potentially? Can it explain whether there is an exposure on the reputation? Those are the angles to think about too. Responsible AI framework is important, and pretty much every organization is thinking through responsible AI. In addition to that, the governance is important through assessments and audits for effective risk mitigation. That's required for DevAIOps pipeline too, because security is a key component on for the value that you deliver to the operational value stream. Finally, ethical implications. We touched a little bit during the security, but ethical guidelines are far more important with the responsible use of AI. Added to that, promote transparency, fairness, and accountability on, with the AI algorithm. Today on Greenfield, pretty much every piece of code can be generated. What is missing is context that you can add, but you do not know whether there is fairness or bias in the system. So those are some of the governance elements. Stakeholder engagement is key and critical. Solicit feedback, bring the concerns to the table. Those are additional steps that you can bring in regulatory compliance. One other thing to look at on all this, while this provides a generic framework, I've abstracted a little bit. The great deal of detail lies in the how, from the technology construct, process construct, and principles that can align in addressing as well. That's an angle to think through in mitigation mitigation, leveraging all these recommendations. So implementation is done. How do we scale? Firstly, even before we scale, start with end in mind. What do you want to achieve? What are your leading indicators? And what is the value that you want to gain out of it? Secondly, establish a centralized team with experts on AI, DevOps, and leadership from business in order to avoid proliferation. Proliferation in terms of duplication and creating conflicts. Develop a comprehensive strategy and roadmap. It's important to look at medium to long-term goals. You don't need to define your 5-year plan for every single day. That's not what it is needed. What is needed, but think about what are your milestones in terms of business and how scaling AIOps can enable that. Invest in right tech, right tools. And that's from the technology angle. More importantly, from the people angle, building cross-functional team is key and critical. And that's regardless of whether you're operating on AIOps with or without AI. Providing right training and support is important. And finally, look at implementing automation. You may believe that today automation is not needed on a particular step, but implementing automation can weave the pipeline better and can enable the flow, which otherwise cannot happen with a breakpoint or wait times created without automation on a particular step. So next two steps are obvious: governance and measurement, iterate, improve. Lastly, starting with end in mind. What you see on the screen is broad set of metrics that we generated, but you don't need to start measuring all the 50 metrics. It's important to start looking at what matters to you most, start and improvise there around the metrics related to business, metrics related to quality, metrics related to predictability, and so on. So that's the broad conclusion that I would like to end with. Happy to take a couple of questions if you have time. Thank you for listening. Oh, okay. How do you implement DevOps process and practice within DevOps team? Specific roles, separate enabling team, and other options. Specific roles are important. Those roles have to be part of the team. One of the key role is, of course, the AI engineer who is capable of building the AI algorithm, leveraging LLMs or SLMs, working with DevOps team to making it part of integrated pipeline. If you keep it standalone, the value of AI is not leveraged. The other roles are around enabling the AI agents in your collaboration, enabling AI agents in terms of effective communication. Those are some of the things that you can bring in. And you can bring in an AI governor too. One of the roles that we brought in was an AI governor who actually looks into the governor itself is an AI agent to look at effectiveness of collaboration, effectiveness of pipeline, and so on. That's one of the things that we are experimenting and seeing some early indication of success in our teams. That was, I guess, a question from Jan. Jan, happy to understand if you have follow on too. Sarsani, ethical concern. We touched upon ethical concern a little bit. Ethical concern is in terms of right usage, especially in the cycle where when you're using AI to provide you a recommendation or generate a code or interpret some data, that's when you need to be mindful of the referenceability, fairness, and transparency. And that's part of the governance to train the model effectively. Unfortunately, I can't resoundingly tell you that it's a cracked code yet, but we are working on guidelines and how to bake that into the pipeline too. So jury is still out on some of the proven measure, but best to start with additional governance around transparency, responsible usage of AI, especially when you engage ecosystem partners, third-party tools, and so on that bring in the AI component. There, it is hard to demarcate where the exposure is and who is responsible. So that's where it's important to debate, bring the questions on the table, and look at mitigation steps. What metrics will we use to measure the success of DevAIOps? What you see on the screens are tons of metrics. Pick the ones that matters to you most. Okay, so those are my initial few answers, but if there are any questions further, happy to take. Okay, I'm looking into the chat. How do we create alignment with overarching corporate AI strategy approach when using niche LLMs? So we are exactly trying to answer that question as we are bringing in SLMs usage into specific pockets. I would say there is a guideline. The way we are addressing in our organization, CGI, is broad set of responsible AI guidelines that are taken and have to be looked at in terms of, for example, we have got various steps of engagement, right from the time we even work on proposal through implementation. We call them step reviews as part of our management foundation. The responsible usage at the time of solutioning, responsible usage and delivery steps are constantly measured and reported back to the corporate. The engagement assessment services at the corporate level are part of ensuring that responsible AI guidelines are implemented and mitigated. We have 10-step guideline today, and one of the things is while it tends to be human policing, for the lack of better word, one of the things we are looking at is to put systems in place in order to instantiate the alignment of overarching corporate AI strategy. Right now, it is done through what is called as responsible AI guidelines, instantiated through step reviews at the time of solutioning, engagement, as well as delivery and implementation. That's what we do today in CGI. Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, Dasa, for the opportunity. This is a great forum, and wish everyone great rest of the conference. See you on the other side. Thank you.